Shocking incident. A female Air India crew member was allegedly assaulted by an intruder in a hotel room in London. The incident took place at the Radisson Red Hotel in Heathrow in London. When the intruder entered the cabin crew member's room and attempted to assault her, the crew members of multiple Air India flights were staying at the property. She was saved by her colleagues after her screams reached them in the adjacent rooms, and they quickly rushed to rescue the victim. The intruder tried to run away when he saw her colleagues coming for help, but was eventually caught by the hotel staff. The injured victim was taken to a nearby hospital before leaving for Mumbai. The airline stated that they are providing all support to their colleague and their broader team, including professional counselling. Though Air India confirmed that the victim was physically assaulted, it did not respond to reports claiming an alleged sexual assault. This incident does raise a serious question about the safety and security measures in London. Joining us at this point is Ambassador Mahesh Sachdev, former diplomat. We also have Adit Kothari, founding member, Indic Society, live with us. Rashmi Samant, author and former Students' Union President, Oxford University, joins us live. Tarun Gulati, former London mayoral candidate, is also live with us on the broadcast. Ambassador Sachdev, an absolute shocker taking place at a reputed hotel in the United Kingdom. What do you make of this incident?
There would be plenty of shamefaced faces around for this lapse of security and simple checking in procedure. In fact, in most hotels these days, you cannot get into a lift and go to any floor unless you have the proper card for a room. How did this happen is something that beats me. At a different level, it shows that social fabric in UK is fraying at various ends. There is a huge economic downturn. They have narrowly avoided a recession in the last quarter. The elections and the race riots, etc., are commonplace in the last few weeks. The upheaval of going from conservatives to Labour and various Paris movements, etc., have further muddied the waters. Threat of ISIS and Islamic radicalization in UK is still alive and kicking. Londonistan, as it was said at one time, not too far back, is still the reputation. So with all that told, and with the city of London and the UK itself relying heavily on tourist flows, this is not exactly an advertisement for London that the UK authorities would like to project. Thank you, Uday.
But yes, the big question, of course, from all of this, Adit Kothari, is how safe is London? How safe is the UK's capital for outsiders?
No, be it outsiders or, Londoners themselves, I don't think, without an iota of doubt that London has turned into one of the unsafe cities. I mean, if we still compare it to the global cities, it still ranks moderately unsafe because the rankings are between 40 to 60, where they're classified as moderately unsafe. But if we compare the statistics to 25 years ago, definitely, the crime rates in London are testimony to the fact of how unsafe it's become, especially with regards to crime against women, what we've seen against this Air India personnel, and violent crimes involving knife crimes. Now, even we've even seen a surge of gun crimes in London. I mean, they're still moderately much lower as compared to something across the Atlantic in the United States. Irrespective of that, this is something which we've completely unheard of. gun crimes and violent crimes. And there is a sense of political correctness within the policy makers, which I think is to be blamed for this surge in this sort of criminal offences and the kind of crimes which are rising in London, which is making an average citizen feel very unsafe. I mean, myself, I have been a victim to crime about a couple of months ago when my own car, which was parked in my driveway, was basically jacked out and everything inside was stolen. My street where I live in is completely busting with drug peddlers and drug traffickers, and the police are completely inept and incorrigible at this point because they're short-staffed and they're not being able to address these issues. So the responsibility totally lies with the Mayor of London and the polity of Britain, where they've been unable to attend to these issues because they're marred with complete political correctness. And as long as this political correctness stays on, I think Londoners will continue to stay unsafe and feel unsafe. Uday.
Yes. Let me, in fact, get in Rashmi Samant. Rashmi Samant, Adit was just referring to a ranking, in which London would perhaps rank quite high and would be called moderately safe. But after such an incident, the big question is, will those rankings revise themselves? I think the answer to that is no. And which is why these rankings as well, unfortunately, do have big questions raised over the biasness in which they are made. But that's, of course, an issue for another day, Rashmi. But what do you make of this horrific crime? An Air India staffer assaulted in this manner, very close to the airport of Heathrow there. Your take?
Uday, I think this incident it comes behind a litany of crimes that have, surfaced in the United Kingdom with increasingly sort of alarming rate of occurrence. So I think what it says is that there's an absolute breakdown of law and order, and the fact that the police just refuse to take action due to their sort of, because of their stuck-up ideas of political correctness. They don't want to persecute a particular category of criminals because they don't want to be seen as racist or so on and so forth. I think that is extremely alarming. Apart from that, I agree with you that these rankings are not going to improve whatsoever. The rankings are not going to change just because crimes are on the rise, because it's the West. The West sets the standards for these rankings. So whatever happens, they do end up coming out on top of things. When I lived in London, there were extreme crimes against women. There were women found in the Thames after being missing for 8-9 days. They were dead and their bodies were floating in the river. And awareness was only raised on local pages, these community Instagram pages of people living in certain locales of London. That's about it. There was no BBC article about it. There was no hue and cry nationally in the United Kingdom, let alone internationally. When you compare that to sort of a gruesome crime that happens in a developing or a recently developed country, or a country in the global south, for instance, then it's flashing news all across the world. There are lofty statements being made about how there's an absolute breakdown of law and order in that particular country, and so on and so forth. But there's a clear double standard, clear case of hypocrisy when it comes to gruesome crimes that happen in these so-called Western countries. But they're equally gruesome, they're equally alarming, and the rate at which they're happening, the frequency at which they occur is also increasing day by day. And the sort of the kind of response by I think the law enforcement agencies, that is something which is concerning. At least in other countries, you can expect that the law enforcement agencies will identify the criminals if there's sufficient evidence in that direction, and actually prosecute them and process the case. But here it's all contingent upon the race, the identity of the criminal, and the police actually there is proper evidence of this. This happened during the prosecution following the arrests made in the grooming gangs case. They actually refused to process it just because the criminals, the perpetrators of the crime, belong to a particular identity. They ascribe to a particular identity, and the police just was scared that they'd be perceived as racist, and they didn't want to proceed with the prosecution. So I feel that this is the major problem. Here you've nabbed the criminals, you have sufficient proof as to suggest that these people have committed the crimes. But then even then, if you don't want to uphold justice, then that's when your society sort of collapses as a whole. And I think that is something that we're seeing in the United Kingdom. The criminals are just brazen at this point. They know that they can get away with anything because they've seen other people around them get away with things, get away with a lenient punishment, get away without a prosecution. So I think that is something which is extremely concerning. And I think that is something that's going to pose a serious challenge, not just to tourists or visiting people to the United Kingdom, also to, citizens, be it white, brown, or whatever. I think everyone's equally exposed to crimes as long as criminals go scot-free and have the confidence that they won't be, processed as per the law, just because there is this, fear of political correctness among politicians, among law enforcement agencies, and the system which is supposed to preserve the cohesion, the social fabric, and ensure safety amongst the people in the United Kingdom. I think that is the biggest problem at this moment facing the United Kingdom.
Yes, indeed. Tarun Gulati, come in here. On this rising crime rate, and of course this incident, which is a real shocker, the brazenness with which this happened, and the sheer manner in which, of course, unfortunately, one of our own Indian there was treated, an Air India staffer. What do you make of this, and is this something which is only becoming too common in London?
Well, thank you for having me today. Firstly, I do express my shock, and indeed this incident is appalling. There needs to be a thorough investigation. I believe the police are involved to ensure they check how did this person get access, because nowadays you can check access. You've got to see the perimeter, the lighting, the corridors, the public access, and indeed an overall security review. I also believe that this is a top hotel in terms of a chain of hotels across the world, and the airline must have arrangements with this hotel in other destinations. They must hurt them economically and review their arrangements and make sure that this matter is raised with the security, because unless they're hurt economically, they may not do that. The mainstream media needs to play a role. I think they sometimes do not highlight aspects like this. There is a lot of misinformation and disinformation in terms of security, and indeed, a previous speaker was alluding to certain aspects of two-tier policing. There is an element of talk, a lot of talk going on in line with that. And I did fight 2 elections. I did stand for the mayor's election and indeed for parliament recently. And security and safety is indeed at its lowest ebb. Things are not looking great in terms of security, and that is impacting both local citizens, tourism, and people are finding it difficult, particularly women, to go out, and they do feel unsafe. And winters are fast approaching. It does get dark pretty early here. So I think there needs to be an overall review. The policing needs to be beefed up. You don't see many bobbies on the beat. There is a lack of policing, and crime has indeed risen over the last decade or so, and the current mayor needs to take stern action. There's not enough policing. Police stations have been shut down. In London alone, around 36 police stations. I have suggested they should also open police booths. Policemen should be measured on a league table to make sure there is both preventive and curative action, so that those who are not performing need to be shown the door. So there needs to be an overall action. It's happening across the UK as we speak, and there is a need for the government of the day to come forward and recognize this is a problem.
Okay, let me in fact, take that back across to Ambassador Sachdev as well. Ambassador Sachdev, in this particular incident, of course, given the fact that it happened with an Indian national, how should the Indian High Commission there react, and the Indian government as well as the concerned airline, if they haven't already?
I think the playbook is quite clear. Air India would need to officially inform the High Commission and the Ministry of External Affairs. Given the seriousness of the situation, the High Commission would need to write to Foreign Office and telling them that this has a diplomatic priority, And they remind them that there is a civil aviation agreement between the two countries, which provides for due security being given to staffers as well as the planes, etc., and the assets. And UK need to take cognizant action. In Delhi, perhaps appropriate person in the UK High Commission can be summoned to Foreign Office and given a bit of a dressing down, saying that this kind of incident and the lapses are unacceptable and they need to take ameliorating action, that these are not to be repeated. And the person who's been caught need to be given suitable trial and punishment at the very earliest. Beyond that, if these incidents become too common, then there's a higher level of diplomatic scrutiny. Foreign Office consultations can have a para about the mutual security of each other's citizens, and a committee can be subcommittee of that Foreign Office consultation can go through all these cases and check whether Indians are more sinning than sinned against, and whether the authorities in the two countries have been taking appropriate actions. If we have a free trade area agreement that Britain badly needs to sign with India, the mouths are salivating with regard to 1.4 billion consumers tied to Unilever products and others, and UK would like to have that signed quickly. This can be used as a lever point to tell UK that you cannot have double standards. Want your goods to be allowed in India at a duty-free level, and our people, our experts, our natural persons, as it is called, are not given the due protection. So all that, these options are open in front of Indian
Yes. Rashmi Samant, what really is leading, according to you, to this breakdown of law and order in the United Kingdom and in London in particular? What is leading to this pattern of rising crimes, of sexual violence as well, and also of these kind of assaults? Is it something that has risen in the recent past, or was it building up for a while? Rashmi, that question was for you.
Oh, yeah. Uday, sorry. So I definitely do believe that it's been, happening for a while. It's been building up for a while. It's not something that has suddenly risen up to the, foreground or something like that. I think this was all in the making for the past 2 decades. I think political correctness is not something that creeps up all of a sudden. It's been sort of a continuous process. The sort of apathy to towards enforcement of law and order, towards enforcement of justice, it's been a sort of slow degradation. Even during my time, we could see stray incidents here and there not being treated, seriously. I mean, as simple as my friend was robbed of his tablet, an iPad on one of the streets in London, and he could still locate it on his iPhone. And he goes to the police, and the police didn't do anything about it. So we have seen, like in front of our eyes, we have seen sort of crimes go, sort of unaddressed, crimes go unpunished, and crimes go unnoticed by the police. So we've seen this firsthand when we lived in London, when we studied there. We've seen this on a regular basis. I mean, in fact, I remember during my stint at the University of Oxford as president, I was, handed a few death threats, and I went to the police being like, listen, I have these extremely racist death threats against me. And the response of the police, I have it in writing, was that the crime has not occurred yet. So, we can't do anything about it. We can't even take cognizance of this. We can't even go to the person issuing these threats and do anything about it. I mean, they're waiting for the crime to happen and for the person to be dead to even consider doing something about it. That was the sort of apathy I experienced in my personal, interactions with the police in the United Kingdom. So I definitely believe that this has been in the making for a very long time, and it's not something that's just coming to the fore now. It's just that the disease was there, the symptoms were there. Now it's just, it's gotten worse, and it's only going to, get worse and worse because the administration is not serious about it. The administration, in fact, here Starmer is putting out statements as to what people can and cannot say on their Twitter. He's more concerned about policing free speech than to listen to the whistleblowers online who are raising genuine concerns about law and order situation and how that is compelling people to in many parts take law and order into their own hands. That is what is happening in the United Kingdom. That is how terrible it's become. But I mean, there's no action being taken, there's nothing happening. But I think at least from the Indian perspective, for the Indians who go to the United Kingdom, at least they have to be more cognizant about what's happening. I believe that the Indian government needs to keep issuing advisories as to the current situation in the United Kingdom. And then I do believe that the Indian government needs to summon the British High Commissioner to India, take this matter up very seriously through the diplomatic channels, as suggested by the ambassador before me, and really, really take the interests of its citizens seriously, because otherwise, they're going to go on about with their, business, and, our people, by the end of the day, they're going to suffer. They're going to be at the end of blatant injustice, and that's not something which is acceptable. But at the same time, I think there needs to be more awareness among the Indian public that the United Kingdom is perhaps not the sort of safe haven they thought it once was, for them to, go study at, for them to go live a life, or for them to find jobs. I think that perception also needs to break. In fact, when I went to study there, I didn't have this perception at all. It was all something I had to learn on the go, having to go through the injustice of the system and realize and find out firsthand for myself. I think this, the the situation is grave, and it's snowballed over decades, and now it's gotten.
Yes, but the problem is that no corrective or remedial steps are being taken, Tarun Gulati. Why is that? There were riots recently in the UK after the elections. These incidents, of course, continue of crime and assault, but nothing is being done about it. That's what makes it criminal.
I think it is, as I hinted earlier, the security is at its lowest ebb. As far as the riots are concerned, I think the government of the day, I belong to a different party, but the government of the day has fast-tracked prosecutions and all that, but the jury is out. There is an element of dismay with some communities and others. There needs to be an overall relook at security. There needs to be an overall relook at how we look at the judiciary. There needs to be an overall relook at how you treat people who are coming from outside. And indeed, when I'm referring to illegal migrants that come in here. And when you look at all that, then there will be a need to beef up policing. You need to change the laws, because this erstwhile been policing by consent. And to that extent, as we note recently, that isn't working as well as it should have been. Police themselves have been attacked by people, and there should be respect for the law enforcement. So things are looking a little bleak as we speak. I do understand there's a lot of hue and cry on the social media and indeed in the media, the mainstream media. And the government of the day will be asked these questions when the parliament reopens next month.
All right.
And some tough questions need to be answered, and some tougher actions need to be taken.
Let me leave the last word with Adit Kothari.
So I think there you asked what is the crux of the problem. So one of the crux of the problem is that you've allowed political correctness to sort of seep in, and as a consequence, what that has made is it's allowed people to take up arms and it's the right to violence has now come down with the citizens and the subjects of the city and subject of the country, rather than policing and the right to violence remaining with the police and the law enforcement agencies. It's now transferred into the hands of the people. So the moment that happens, problem and chaos is bound to be on the streets. When we look at statistically, let's pick up London, for instance. The white population in London is roughly about 55%. Their influx within the jails is roughly about 45%. But when we look at the blacks, their population is roughly about 13.5%. But their involvement in knife crimes, especially violent crimes, is almost as high as 35%. So there is a disproportionate representation of the black community when it comes to the violent crimes. Has the police or the policymakers or the polity been able to address it? Absolutely not, because they are marred with political correctness. So they're even scared to talk about these issues. So now the blame should actually lie with both the people in the power and the people in the opposition, because they both fail to address this issue. The opposition don't want to rake up this issue because they'll be seen as bigots and racists, rather than putting the data out, and the party in power or the political power doesn't want to raise this up because it's not in their interest from an electoral representation and electoral voting perspective. So these are the problems that I think need to be addressed, and I think more policy makers and more think tanks need to come up front and possibly raise these issues so that the wider public, the wider citizens are well aware of where we are going with the statistics and who's really responsible and why they are responsible.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.